What if I told you the push to ditch oil isn't really about saving the planet anymore? Hmm. Yeah. It's about power. It's about control. And honestly, it's about who gets exposed when things go wrong. Because the countries that rely on oil the most, they might be the most vulnerable ones in the room. Hey, I'm Vanessa. And if you like money, power moves, and understanding what's actually going on behind the headlines, you're in the right place. Because today, we're breaking down why oil isn't just an energy story anymore. It's a global strategy game. Okay, so for the longest time, the whole move away from oil conversation felt very predictable, right? Like save the planet, reduce emissions, be responsible, be a good human, recycle your stuff, maybe feel a little guilty when you drive too much. And yeah, obviously, climate matters a lot. But lately, something shifted. And it's not subtle anymore. Because now this whole transition, it's not being driven by climate first, it's being driven by security. There's this growing group, strategists, analysts, investors, policymakers, basically all looking at the same situation and going, yeah, this isn't just about being green anymore. This is about control, about resilience, about who's stable and who's completely exposed when things go wrong. And then global events start stacking up. Conflict in the Middle East, attacks on infrastructure, shipping routes under pressure, supply chains getting shaky. And suddenly everyone's asking the same uncomfortable question: how dependent are we? Really? Because here's the truth people are finally admitting out loud. Oil and gas systems, they are incredibly powerful, but also fragile in a very specific way. They rely on cooperation between countries. They rely on open trade routes. They rely on stability in regions that are not always stable. That's a risky setup. Let me give you a real example. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical oil chokepoints in the world, gets threatened. And just like that, around 16 million barrels per day are at risk. 16 million. Prices spike, markets react instantly. Entire economies feel it within days, sometimes hours. That's how sensitive everything is. And this is where the conversation gets really interesting. Because someone at a major energy conference said something so simple, but kind of brutal. You import a solar panel once. You import oil every day. Pause, that line explains everything. Oil is powerful because it moves easily. You can ship it, trade it, store it, sell it globally. But that exact strength, it's also the weakness. Because anything that moves globally can be disrupted globally. War, sanctions, shipping bottlenecks, political tension. And when oil gets disrupted, it's not just energy. It's transport, food prices, manufacturing, inflation, everything. We've already seen how bad this can get. Look at Europe. Before 2022, around 40% of its natural gas came from Russia. Everything looked stable until it wasn't. War breaks out, gas flows drop, pipelines get hit, and suddenly, prices explode. Industries slow down, governments scramble, and when infrastructure like Nord Stream gets taken out, that's when things really spiral. Europe had to rush into global markets, compete for supply, and pay insane prices. It was chaotic, and it exposed something very uncomfortable. Dependence is a liability. Now compare that to a system where more energy is generated locally. Solar, wind, electric grids, storage. Is it perfect? No. There are still supply chains, minerals, infrastructure challenges. But structurally, it's different. Because once it's built, you're not depending on daily fuel imports from unstable regions. And here's where behavior starts shifting. Because when prices stay high long enough, people don't just complain, they adapt. They switch to EVs. They reduce fuel use, they change habits, and those changes, they don't easily reverse. That's what analysts call demand destruction, and it's already happening. Electric vehicles are already cutting into oil demand globally. Not someday, now. And if governments respond to geopolitical shocks with stronger incentives, that shift speeds up fast. And this is where investors start paying attention. Because the question isn't just, is this profitable? Now it's, is this resilient? Is this secure? Will this survive the next crisis? One expert said it clearly. Energy security now matters more than capital efficiency. Which basically means people are willing to sacrifice short-term returns for long-term stability. That's a huge mindset shift. Now, this transition isn't smooth. It's not fast, and it's not equal everywhere. A lot of the world still depends heavily on oil. Even in advanced economies, demand hasn't dropped as quickly as expected. So, yeah, this is messy. And politically, even messier. Some countries are doubling down on renewables. Others are pulling back and reinvesting in fossil fuels. So this isn't a straight path. But zoom out. Even if oil demand sticks around, the way countries think about energy has already changed. Because now the real question is, how do we avoid being vulnerable? And that's why this shift matters. Because transitions driven by climate, they can be delayed, but transitions driven by security, those happen fast. Sometimes painfully fast. One analyst put it bluntly, we might not choose this transition, it might be forced on us. So yeah, this isn't just about going green anymore. It's about reducing exposure, reducing dependence, reducing risk. Because in a world where supply chains can break overnight, the countries that control their own energy, they don't just survive, they win. And that's the real power shift.